We're speaking this morning to Azhar Hew. He is the Group CEO of Rockwills. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Azhar.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Now, before we begin, let's talk about wills, right? What is the importance of a will?
Well, when you have a will, it's very much your last instructions to your family members. So when you have a will, it clearly states what do you want to do upon death. This could include even funeral instructions, burial instructions, but most importantly, it's used to distribute your assets to your beneficiaries. You will name who to be in charge of handling your assets to distribute to your beneficiaries. You would also list down instructions about charitable distribution sometimes. So the will could be used for a variety of things. You could even use the will to exclude certain family members from receiving. We do have parents who do not wish their sons or their daughter to receive, and they specifically mention in the will, I'm not giving to my son or even my husband because of what reason. So you could do that. But if you don't have a will, you can't leave such an instruction. So it's important to have a will in case you would like to leave out someone.
So that means if you don't have a will, everybody gets it.
Everybody gets it. Your next of kin will get, your spouse will get, because you didn't leave any instructions to say don't give it to them.
Right, okay.
But it's based on what the states or what the courts will say, right? If you have no will.
Well, for Malaysians, we have, for non-Muslims, we have the Distribution Act. So when a non-Muslim passes away, that act would apply, the Distribution Act in 1958. It will tell you who's going to get. It's fixed. For example, if you pass on and you leave behind your spouse, your spouse will get a portion, your children will get a certain portion, and your parents will get. So assuming your parents, spouse, and children are around, your spouse will get a quarter of what you have, your children half, and then your parents would be the other quarter. It's fixed. But if all three of them are not around, your siblings would get in line. Thereafter, your auntie, uncles, and grandparents and all that would get.
Also, it does still trickle down all the way to, as long as they're somehow connected to you by blood.
Correct. It does trickle down, and the end beneficiary, if there are no next of kin, the government would be entitled to it.
Right. Oh, I thought your pets and everything also.
Well, unless you write a will.
All right. But how about for Muslims?
For Muslims, you will have the Farid distribution that would come in, that would look at, again, similar to the Distribution Act, your spouse, your son, your daughters, your mother, father, and then your siblings potentially, if you don't have any male heirs, receive. And sometimes, when you don't have any male heirs to receive, Baitumal would come in to receive a portion of the estate.
Right.
Okay. Now, do you have a story to share with us of someone who probably did not have a will present and how it actually affected the entire family?
Yeah, I do. In fact, there are quite a number. Let me just share one of it. Well, this is a story of Mr. Chan, not his real name, of course. When he died, he was 78 years old. He left behind 8 commercial properties, as well as 1 residential property which he was staying with his wife. When he passed away, his wife survived him together with the 3 sons and a daughter. He left close to about R1 million in cash in the bank, right? So that's quite substantial. He died without a will, of course, and the Distribution Act came into play to distribute his assets. So his wife had received 1/3 of the estate, and the children got 2/3, right? So that's pretty fair in terms of distribution. But the problem arose when deciding who to manage that particular asset, who to distribute those assets among them. They couldn't agree. So they were kind of like fighting away as to who would have that power to do distribution. And the elder son, wanted control because he was in charge of helping the father collecting rental of the property and whatnot. Long disputes among them, just on trying to find out who's going to be in charge, agreeing on who's going to be in charge. As far as I know, till today, the last I met them, that was about 10 years back. Till today, they haven't got it resolved yet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I don't know whether the wife is still around, or the mother is still around, or not. So things like this could go on for many years, and you know, the fights about inheritance. Sadly, we have children won't be able to speak to each other because of money.
Wow.
But this happens as well, even with a will present. Some people contest the will as well,
Oh, it's
right?
contestable?
Firstly, the will is contestable, but to contest a will, you will have to have grounds to contest. For example, you're saying that when the person who signed the will, which is called the testator, the maker of the will, when he signed that will, he didn't have any sound mind. He was in a hospital. He was suffering some sort of illness or medication, or he was forced to sign, for example.
Yeah.
It can be challenged on grounds like that. But let's say those grounds are absent, then your will, even though someone is not happy with the distribution, you won't really be able to challenge it. You'll be making a lot of noise, of course, but your chances of success would be, well, non-existent to a very large extent. So when you have a will, you write everything clearly in terms of who's going to be the one taking charge as the executor, who's going to get what asset, how you're going to distribute, what conditions are you going to fulfill before you're able to inherit. So it's all very clearly written. To using the Distribution Act has the general guideline to distribute. That leads to a lot of arguments, and your assets are going to be definitely fragmented. Imagine Mr. Chan, he has got 8 properties, got 4 kids and a wife, 9 properties already altogether. You'll be divided by 5 people. Then their kids are later on going to pass on, will have grandchildren and their spouse. So imagine that property will have how many owners after a few years?
Yeah. We all know it's hard to share, right?
Somebody's gonna go, it's not fair, lah. Right? Somebody is bound to say that, right?
Now, can someone actually write a will by themselves and without the need of any legal services?
Generally, the rule says yes, you can. There's no law that says that only a lawyer can do it or someone else with certain qualification can do it. You can write your own will. But I think when you do your own will, you need to be very careful, because what you write in the will is something that, okay, I understand what I'm writing, but when another party reads it, it cannot make head or tail of what you're trying to say. So that's problematic for your executor. Moreover, the danger is that the way the will is signed may not be done properly. You could be signing on your own without 2 witnesses being present. Or the witnesses who sign are suddenly one of those beneficiaries named in the will.
Oh, right.
The result would be this person would be disinherited because he signed as a witness.
Okay.
Unless you're doing that on purpose.
So if you're a beneficiary of the will, you cannot be named a witness. But can you be
sign as a witness?
Okay. But can you be named as an executor?
You can, as an executor. You can be named an executor generally, but the role of an executor is heavy. It is full of powers, duties, liabilities as well. Nobody teaches you how to be an executor. A lot of times it's by trial and error. You hope that your lawyer will be able to guide you, but a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff like applying to the tax department for tax clearance is on your own. Getting financial statements done, you need to know how to do it, or at least hire someone. You need to know where to recover the assets in terms of, for example, JPJ transfer, car transfer. You need to find someone to do it for you, all right? With all the hassle there, Puspakom checks and whatnot, property searches. So there's a whole lot of things that the executor needs to do. And the moment you are doing it a bit, well, you're taking your own sweet time, the beneficiaries in the will would be grumbling. Why is it taking so long? It should have been done yesterday. Right? And you don't get paid, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? They'll probably think that you pocketed quite a bit of the bank account on your own.
So the executor is really a very important role in sort of applying whatever that is on the will.
Correct. He's the main person in that will. Without him, if he doesn't want to act, nothing gets really done in the will. The beneficiaries could make a lot of noise, but he may not listen. And to force him to move, the beneficiary would have to take him to court to back, or at least to remove him. So that's money and all that. So if you appointed the wrong person to be the executor, well, be prepared to spend money, and probably some of your assets will be lost. Be absconded, or the executor may be hearing rumors to invest and just invest your money away, and then well, you get your get rich quick scheme. You could lose everything.
Right.
So that's why it's better to sort of hire a third party to become an executor to your will.
Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, there's such a thing. You could hire a trust company, for example, right, to do that work, because the trust company, it's bread and butter for them, this kind of work. So they will have all the processes intact, all the what we call this roles and responsibilities all clearly defined, and the reporting is done very regularly to the beneficiaries so that they know, all right, what's going on, and they don't have to worry that the trust company is going to abscond with it, because it's a corporation, it's not an individual, so it's not so easy to run away. Plus, the trust company is regulated by the authorities in Malaysia. So there are there's oversight compared to an individual where there's none.
And besides, they're called a trust company for a reason, so you can trust them.
Yeah.
Now, Azhar, at what age would you recommend a person to start writing a will or start thinking about writing a will? Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but when people say, oh, write a will, it's like writing a death wish like that. What do you wish once you're dead? And you're thinking, a lot of people are a bit more superstitious about it, I guess. Right?
Well, okay. Legally in Malaysia, you could begin writing a will when you're 18. But most of the time, you're just simply too young. You don't have any assets as well. Usually these days, based on the statistics that Rockwills have got, is that our clients range from the age of 21, which is a very small number, but the growing number are those that are in the early 30s, 40s. We don't have that many clients these days who are very elderly. But a lot of our clients are between the 30s and the 50s and the 60s, actually, because they've got a growing family and they're very concerned about when they're not around, okay, I've got to provide quickly my assets to be made available to my family so that they can move on with life. Otherwise, they don't have a will, a lot of hassle. So writing a will these days, it's not a death wish. It was probably probably 20, 30 years ago, people would have thought very taboo to write a will. You know, doing a will today, tomorrow will die or fall sick. But the society is a lot more open, and then I think you can see people even buy pre-need packages for funeral with a lot of the funeral homes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So that's probably even worse than writing a will.
Yeah. This is just planning ahead. That's all it is, right?
It is just planning ahead. Well, eventually there are only two things that are certain in life is, death and taxes. So you gotta go sometime. So let's prepare for it.
Right.
Correct. Now, for those, like you said earlier, if they're young and they don't have much assets, is it necessary to write a will? Or if someone who's an older person but he doesn't have anything to leave for his children or family, should a will be written as well?
I think regardless of the age, so long as you've got some assets that you want to hand over to a specific family member and you want to make it easier for them to inherit, it will be important for you to write the will, regardless of your age. If you are an uncle who's 60 years old but you don't have any assets, then would say, uncle, pointless for you to do a will because you got no assets to give away.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I had a friend recently, the father passed away a couple of years ago, and he didn't leave them many things, but like there are plates and artworks and things like that he's done. And because he didn't write a will, everything just went to the son. And the daughters were a bit upset because it's not something that is valuable, but it is to them, you see.
It's a principle thing, right?
Yeah, so if that person left a will, he could distribute it quite, I guess, equally, though it's plates and artwork and not all that, but he could mention which painting goes to who. The fact that he didn't leave a will, even though it's sentimental in value, you could see that there's already unhappiness between the siblings, right? So which is not a good, which is not something that you want to leave behind when you pass on.
Yeah.
Your kids to be harmonious, so should have got a will done actually, even though it's a simple one.
I feel like a will is like you're still alive even after you've passed on, giving instructions still.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're speaking from your grave in that sense, to tell people this is what I want. So make sure you follow my instructions, not somebody else's instruction.
Yeah.
And also, it's a great piece of paper to have in case somebody argues and say, "Hey, I cut you out of my will,
Yeah, you can use that.
Right.
I remember we had a client where he had a hearing problem at some point. Then he wrote a will. When he wrote a will, his children found out about it, that he was still had hearing issues, and they were talking among themselves, and the father here could hear what they were saying, and he quietly rewrote his will whenever he hears their conversation, give them more or less.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
So you can rewrite your will. How many times? Is there a limit to how many times?
There's no limit, so long as you have got sound mind and you're not drunk or under medication. During your lifetime, you can write him however many times.
But the courts will take the latest, most recent will.
Yeah,
right?
they'll take the latest one to be used to be probated for distribution.
Right.
So
No, if you want, go ahead, Azhar.
Well, I was saying, whenever you write a later will, it'll be good to destroy the earlier wills, because otherwise you have family members picking and choosing which one is better to you.
Oh, right. Okay.
Confused.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how much does it cost to write a will legally? Does it cost a lot of money?
There are actually no fixed price. Different service provider provides different fees. I can only speak about for Rockwills, for example. We start at 480 ringgit, which is the most basic will. When you want to have more instructions, it become more comprehensive with conditions of giving to your children, to your grandchildren. That can be as high as probably a few thousand ringgit. Depends on how comprehensive you want to make it.
Oh, I see. So it depends on the complexity of the case, is it?
The clauses.
Yeah, complexity of the case, because there are clients who would like to say, okay, I would like to give it to my children, but if any of my kids are not around, then to their children, and I'm willing to set up a trust for my grandchildren. And these are the conditions. So it could be very long, and they could also set aside a certain portion for charitable distribution to existing charity, where we recently had a case called Madam W, which
I read that. I read
yeah.
that article. I was just
So
going to ask you about that.
so that client, she reserved about 6 million or so in her will, where she said, okay, the 6 million needs to be invested, and the returns for the investment, please distribute to orphanages that every year you distribute once to the orphanages. So we just recently distributed about 190,000 to 20 orphanages. And every year we do the same for different orphanages. So everyone gets a bit of that money every year. And this arrangement can go on forever, so long as the 6 million is not touched for distribution.
That is if the investment is a good investment. If the investment is a bad investment, then it just dies a natural death.
Yeah, the best is not to be overly what we call aggressive. So you should take a conservative stance in the investment, or a balanced investment portfolio, so that you have a return between 3% to 4% or so, and that will be enough from that 6 million to do distribution.
Right.
Because what you want is to preserve the capital, not to lose it, and being mindful that you know that orphans are dependent on this money.
Yeah.
You better do your job proper as an executor or trustee.
Right.
Now, I mean, in your job, Azhar, you deal with life and death and a lot of material possessions, right?
Yeah.
Do you think life's possession still matters to those that are alive after you're dead?
Yes, because something that you want to pass along for them to remember you by.
But isn't it like an object of contention for a lot of families? So would it be better to just give it all away to charity?
You can do that as well, but sometimes your kids are young, so you can't do that.
Right.
Unless your kids are all adults and they are non-filial that you see, then we'll tell you spend it all away, uncle, first now. Otherwise, then give it to charity. But you need to do a will in order to give it to the charity. If you don't do a will, your kids will get, whether they are filial or not. But a lot of times we tell clients, when you do a will today, when your kids are young, okay, please review the contents of your will every 2 years once. They're growing up. They have got different needs. You have different needs. You've got different assets as well that you didn't add in, or you have sold off. So it's good to update and to make sure that your last will actually represents your last wishes, not your wishes that you wanted 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, because some people write a will like at their prime. They think, okay, today I'm going to write a will, and then they forget about it until the day they pass, and they have gathered new assets maybe, or have, like you said, sold some assets. What will happen to all these new assets?
Okay, usually in a will, whenever you have a will, there's always going to be this thing called a residue clause, which is essentially a clause that captures all the assets that you did not specify in your will, right? So go into this basket of sorts, and in this basket, in the will, you mention that the residue will be given to which person. So all these assets that are not listed will go into this residue. That beneficiary would receive it, right? So that would encompass all your assets, whether you have written it down specifically or you have forgotten about it, or you may acquire it in the future. It will go into the residue.
I see. How about, we've been talking about assets and material possession, but how about bank loans and debts? Can you write that in your will as well?
I wish you could transfer it, but you can't. That, unfortunately, your estate will have to pay for it. So the thing about inheritance is that for you to inherit from someone, you are going to be the last in line in terms of the process. So what's going to happen is that, firstly, the executor had to apply for probate. He gets probate. He will need to clear the dead person's income taxes first, all right? Once you have cleared that, then you now pay your creditors, the deceased creditor, which includes the bank loan, the housing loan, the hire purchase, your credit cards, your personal loan, your overdraft and whatnot. Then whatever that's left over, hopefully there's some, then you'll get it. So what we tell our clients, if you do want your instructions in your will to be carried out and fulfilled, so that your wishes come true, do make sure that you have enough money to pay off your liability. For example, you buy a property and you don't get MRTA for it.
Mm-hmm.
That is, and you write in this will, I give this property to my son, knowing full well you don't have MRTA and you don't have a lot of money in your bank account. That instruction likely is not going to be carried out, because when this person passes away, the banks would be knocking on the door of the family for payment. On the 4th month, you'll go an auction, all right? So you don't even get to have that probate yet. The property will be auctioned. But if you did get an MRTA, for example, it would have been paid off. The family would have a house to stay, as opposed to being chased out. Same thing for the car, for example, the family car. If you have enough cash or life insurance to pay it off, that's important. So a lot of the planning goes into not just writing your instruction, who to give what asset, but also consists of about how to pay off your debts to make sure that you have a substantial estate, net estate, being distributed to your beneficiaries. That is the end game, because writing the will is just the first part. It's the second part about settling your liabilities.
Yeah. And you don't want to burden your family further with all your...
Yeah, so instead of being happy, they'll be wondering like, okay, this piece of paper doesn't have any meaning to it because I'm not getting anything from it. It says I'm getting 1 million, but I'm getting 10 cents of it.
Actually, about the housing loan thing, some people have they take the MRTA, which is Mortgage Reduction Term Assurance, right? Some people take an MLTA where there's money that you can actually get back.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Now, the one that I want to know is if the house is there, everything's paid off already, and it's good to go, and it says, hey, I want all my kids to share it, but one person who's in the share wants to say, I think we should sell it. Is that enough reason for everybody to say, okay, we have to sell it if one person says yes?
No. In order to sell the property, you need all of them to agree to sell it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the executor will just have to transfer the name into all their names, which is not a very good thing, I would say, when you do a will, because I don't particularly recommend, if you have a few children and you have a few property, it's best not to have the properties shared among all your children. It's already leading to fragmentation, and with the next generation is going to be worse. It'd be better to give probably one child a property to prevent that fragmentation.
Yeah.
I know parents would like to be fair to all the kids, but realistically you can't. You just have to say, okay, my son who's getting the $5 million bungalow is getting that only and getting nothing else. The one who's getting the 2 million bungalow is going to get a 2 million bungalow and something else to compensate for that difference.
Right.
And so forth with the other kids. I think that's a lot more practical, right? When you do that.
And that's why that's why people get you guys to do it, because that's where the complexity comes in, because a lot of people don't think about stuff like that. And then that's where it gets a bit more complex for the families and everything, right?
Yes. Right.
All right. It's not like, so this son will get the master bedroom, this one will get the gate, this one will only get all the right.
No, most of the time, like I've encountered, I've heard of friends with all of them, 3 boys share one
Yeah, yeah.
house. The father left them each one house
Yeah.
only, and one wants to sell and the other 2 doesn't. You know, and what are you gonna do? You just have to.
Yeah.
You'll be
stick
stuck
with it.
there, and
Yeah.
then, you know,
You can't have 3 families living under one roof.
correct. And then the bills, you'll be wondering who's going to pay the water.
Correct. Yeah, that's another headache, right?
Now, why should everyone have a will, Azhar, in your opinion?
Well, when you have your will, as I mentioned earlier, you leave very clear instructions who is going to get what asset, how is it going to be divided. Hopefully, family disputes will not exist when you have a properly written will. And it's important to just simply name someone in charge of the whole thing. And you leave a proper legacy for your next generation. Otherwise, the heirs would fend for themselves to decide how should the distribution be done. Like your friend that you mentioned, Bel, the brother got all the plates, and the sister didn't get anything. You know, and annoyed about that. But you have a will. It's all very clear cut.